One thing we all love to do is add comments. We love to add comments to our code. Now, this is a best practice. You should always be doing this. Comments are kind of a way to describe what is happening. For now, we're writing really simple queries. But as you gain more and more complexity, these comments are going to help you. And they're going to help you document the complex scenarios that you're going through, the thought processes that go through the code. Because when you write complex queries, what ends up happening is you have 300, maybe 400 lines of some kind of stored procedure or something complex that's happening on an existing code base because someone wrote it. And when you go in there and that person put comments there, you're going to thank him so much. Because everyone says code is self-explanatory. Well, we can just read this and we can figure out what's going on. But when you get into the nitty-gritty, and we just saw what functions are, when you start combining functions with queries and all of these different things and potentially updating something and reading from somewhere else and joining and aggregating all of this data, kind of like selecting from multiple tables, when you do these complex scenarios and you don't have any kind of commentary on what's happening, it may become very difficult for you to deduce what's going on. So these are an absolute must. These are a best practice. And you'll find them kind of redundant for the exercises that we'll be doing in the beginning as we are building a foundation, but they become absolutely vital when we get to the more complex queries. And from there, who knows? Maybe you'll start a job as a database engineer, and then you'll start writing complex queries and you'll start documenting code. And maybe they won't have practices on how to document things and you'll be the one doing it and starting a practice. But this is a must. So how do we add comments? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to do an exercise to show you how I would normally document something. And you have two types of comments. You have single line and you have multi-line. And what they allow you to do is quickly put something in between a line or next to a line. Or the multi-line can be used to document a multitude of things. Now, the database we'll be using is the employees database, since we're most familiar with that right now. And the type of exercise we'll be doing is comment your select statement. Now, this may seem very basic and very outlandish to do when you're doing a very simple query, but the principle is key. So I want to take a blast to the past and go all the way back to the simple select statement. And back when we did the simple select statement, you may have noticed that we did something a bit more complex, which was a filter. So we had all of these clauses: select column name, from table users, where the column row equals manager. So when we were evaluating each and every row, if your role was not equal to manager, then you'd be kicked out of the results. We wouldn't see you. You'd be gone. So that simple select statement was a bit more involved and had that filtering option. Now I want to bring that back to set that basis because we're going to be doing an exercise with a filter. Just wanted to cut that quick refresher out of the way. So two questions we have. Select the employee with the name Mayuma Schuler, and then comment on your query what exactly is happening. Now, feel free to pause the video here and go ahead and try it out if you feel brave enough. And when you get back, we'll be solving it together. Otherwise, stick around because we're going to jump right into it. So first off, let's make sure that our server is running. All right, now that we're up and running, let's get in here. So let's connect to the education database and let's go to our employees. Open that up. And then let's open the SQL editor. So let's go over to our schema public and let's go over to our tables. So we're looking for Mayuma Schuler. So we have our employees table right here. And in the employees table, we have the field called first name and last name. All right. So if we looked at our query, we were doing a select where role equals manager. So based off of that, we kind of know how to find her. All right, let's get to it. So let's write that query. Select first name comma last name from, and then let's double click the table here just to make it easier on ourselves. And then we want to say where first name equals Mayumi. Let's see what that gives us. Oh, well, we can see there are many, many Mayumis in this code base, one of which is Schuler, the first one, luckily. So we know she's there. But so how would we filter on both her first name and her last name? Well, SQL has this cool term called AND that you can use in a where clause. And it's basically saying, okay, let's filter on this and this. Logical, right? Very easy. So let's put last name equals Schuler. And what we'll see happen here is that we'll only get back one result. All right, let's take this a step back. We just learned a lot, right? So select first name and last name. And then we saw in our simple select query that we can do a filter on a single column. But now we introduce this AND keyword. And what that gives us is the power of checking multiple columns. That is amazing. Okay, we complicated our filtering. We made it more complex. We made it check two values now. Great. Now we have a dumbed down search result, right? We only have one record shown. That's great. Now you could have done this query just as well with the first filter. You would have had to filter through a lot of data. So let's document what's going on here. So 2 dashes means inline comment. Filter on first name and last name to limit the amount of data returned and focus the filtering on a single person. Now I see you thinking, well, Mo, why didn't you use a multi-line comment here? Well, I should have, so let's do that. Let's port it over to a multi-line comment. And so, like that, we can just take this, put it over here, do that. And now we have a multi-line comment right here. And it doesn't matter how many spaces you leave between the select and where, because the semicolon is telling it where it's going to end. Now, at the top here, we can say select statement to filter Mayumi Schuler. And this basically tells us what the select query is going to do. Now, it is always best practice, like I said, to comment your code. It is up to you to decide how you're going to comment your code. But what's absolutely vital, and what I would suggest you always do, is when you write a query, right above the query, put a comment of what the query is trying to accomplish. What is the intended outcome of the query? And then if you have some complicated things going on, well, you can always comment where it's happening, or you can comment beside the line even. You can say filter here on Mayumi Schuler. So you have a lot of versatile options here in terms of how you're going to filter. So I hear you saying now, well, I know what the AND keyword does. And okay, I get all of the commenting and I understand that it's important. Cool. But Mo, now that I have unlocked this superpower with where and, what else can I do? And trust me, we'll be getting into that. We have a whole bunch of videos for you to master filtering. But before we get into all of that, I quickly want to dive into the most commonly made mistakes when writing queries, because I think it's important for you to see what the most common mistakes are so that you can avoid them. Avoid them completely. We're going to be masters here. So let's get into that before we dive into mastering filtering.